Hi, I'm just hanging out in the rabbitry today, and I want to talk a little bit about evaluating fur, both from a judging standpoint and from an exhibitor or breeder standpoint. There are 6 characteristics of fur: density, texture, length, balance, condition, and some word that describes brilliance. Might be luster, might be sheen, something like that. I think you have to evaluate those characteristics both visually and with your hands. I know there are some people that say, well, you can close your eyes and evaluate a coat. I don't agree with that. There are things that you cannot feel. You can't feel the sheen, you can't feel the luster of the coat, you can't feel the complete finish of the coat. Density and texture get the most comments in terms of the judging process, and often they have specific points allotted to them in standard. Density, of course, is how thick the coat is, and I think the best way to evaluate that is stroke the coat from the rear end of the rabbit up to the neck of the rabbit and take a look at the crease that's created in that process. And if you see a lot of skin, then the coat's thin. If you see a lot of fur at the base of that crease, then you've got a coat that has more density. Texture is how the coat feels. And again, stroking it from the back to the front, you've got to have enough texture so that it lies smoothly over the body and when it returns on its own. There are some exceptions to that. Certainly wool doesn't do that. Silver fox coats aren't made that way. Rexed coats aren't made that way as well. But all the other breeds, essentially, the expectation is that there will be enough resistance to return the coat to its natural position when you stroke it from the rear to forward. I think about texture a little bit like resistance against your hand, kind of pushing against your hand a little bit to get back to that natural position. Length of coat, sometimes there's seldom points allotted to length, but there are descriptions of ideal length in many standards. Basically what you're looking for is a uniformity of length over the back or the sides or the belly, those different areas of the rabbit. The balance of the coat is really the balance of those characteristics. Length, is the length balanced over the coat? Is the texture balanced, etc. Brilliance, the brilliance of the coat really is affected by condition. In satins, again, it's sheen, and Havanas, it's luster. There are other words to describe it in the standard, but it's really the life of the coat. And finished coats tend to be shinier, and coats that are out of condition tend to be duller looking coats. And finally, I'm going to close with some comments on condition. Condition really affects all of the other characteristics. There are points allotted to condition. Typically in the standard, if there are 5 points allotted, half of those are on flesh and half of those are on fur. And 2.5 points doesn't seem like a lot of points in a fur class or a regular class if you're looking at fur. But again, condition affects all of the other characteristics of the coat. It affects the density. You're going to have thin spots if it's out of condition. It affects the texture. You're going to have harsh areas and smoother areas on the coat. It's not going to have the textural uniformity that a coat should have that's in good condition. The length of coat will be affected by condition. There'll be areas, patches of the coat that'll have broken guard hairs, so it'll be uneven in its length in those areas. The sheen or the brilliance of the coat will be, just won't be there. It'll be dull, or you might have sheen in one area or luster in one area and not in another. And while it doesn't matter in a fur class, color does make a difference in the regular classes, and coats that are out of condition are going to be very dull in color. And I think ultimately that's why loses on condition really is a comment about all of that. And I think you have to take all of that in consideration when you're hearing that comment, loses on condition, that it affects fur points, it affects color points, etc. So hope this is helpful. I'd love to chat with you about fur anytime. Thank you.